You might not believe this now, but by the end of this story, you will feel something you haven't felt in a long time. And if even one moment touches your heart, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories that remind us of who we really are, and how powerful a single dream can be. The cameras were already rolling, the lights humming softly above the massive stage of America's Got Talent, but behind the curtain stood a man whose hands trembled as if holding memories far heavier than the microphone he gripped. His name was Arvin Santos, a 37-year-old Filipino singer who had spent his entire life sounding like Elvis Presley yet never once feeling like he deserved to sing. Tonight, he was supposed to step out, smile, and perform. But behind his practiced grin lived a storm of stories no one on that stage knew. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, the scent of backstage curtains faded into the faint smell of fried bananas and warm rice from his childhood home in Quezon City. His mother's voice echoed in his ears, soft and full of love, telling him the same thing she had told him thousands of times. "Anik, your voice is a gift. Someday, people will listen." She used to say it whenever she found him singing along to old Elvis tapes his father collected. They didn't have much, but music made the walls of their tiny home feel bigger, brighter. Arvin believed, back then, that songs could fix everything. But life has a way of testing the ones who dream the hardest. When Arvin turned 18, tragedy arrived like a sudden winter, cold and cruel. His father suffered a heart attack on his way home from work, leaving behind a wife who grew weaker each year and a son who suddenly had no choice but to step into a life he wasn't ready for. Arvin dropped his dreams and picked up 2 jobs. He stopped singing at night and counted coins instead. And as years passed, the voice everyone said was special became something he used only to soothe his mother when her lungs screamed with pain. When she passed away, he stopped singing altogether. He stopped everything. For a long time, silence filled his life like a heavy fog. It was only during a karaoke night organized by Filipino co-workers in Los Angeles years after he moved to the US that someone finally heard him again. When he sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," the entire room shifted. People turned, hushed, stared, as if Elvis himself had stepped into the tiny Filipino restaurant. By the time he finished, one of his friends slapped the table and said, "Bro, what are you doing working in a warehouse? You need to audition. The world needs your voice." Arvin laughed at first. Then he cried. Not because he agreed, but because he didn't know if he had anything left inside him worth sharing. Still, something small and brave inside his chest whispered that maybe, just maybe, his mother's dream hadn't died with her. So he auditioned. And months later, he found himself standing backstage at AGT, shaking, as the producers whispered, "You're next." As Arvin stepped out onto the stage, the crowd's cheers rose like a wave, loud, bright, overwhelming. The judges studied him curiously. Simon Cowell leaned forward, hands clasped, eyebrows lifted. "What's your name?" he asked. Arvin Santos," he replied, voice quivering. "And what brings you to AGT?" A simple question. But behind it lived 20 years of struggle, sacrifice, grief, and love. Arvin swallowed. "To honor someone who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself," he said softly. The audience leaned in. The judges paused. Something in his voice carried a truth deeper than the words themselves. Then the music began. The first notes trembled out of him, fragile like a bird with healing wings. But by the second line, something cracked open, not his voice, but his heart. He wasn't just singing Elvis. He was singing his father's joy, his mother's hope, the nights he spent alone wishing life could be softer, kinder. He sang through every tear he never allowed himself to shed, and for the first time in years, he didn't care about sounding perfect. He just wanted to feel. The crowd went silent in a way a crowd of thousands seldom does. Simon Cowell, known for interruptions and sharp critiques, simply leaned back and listened. No comments. No expressions. Just listening, as if the song pulled him into another life entirely. Halfway through the chorus, Arvin's voice cracked. A single tear escaped his eye. He wiped it quickly, embarrassed. But then something unexpected happened. The audience began cheering softly, not loud enough to interrupt, but loud enough to remind him he wasn't alone on that stage. He took a breath, steadied himself, and let his voice rise again, higher, stronger, freer. When the last note soared into the rafters, the room erupted. People stood. Some cried. Even the cameraman forgot to move for a moment. And then, slowly, Simon Cowell stood up. "Arvin," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle, "we hear singers all the time. Good ones. Great ones. But it's rare, very rare, that someone sings not just with skill, but with their life. That's what you did today." Arvin covered his mouth, shaking. Simon continued, "Your voice, it's beautiful. But your heart, that's what people felt tonight." He reached toward the golden buzzer, paused, looked directly into Arvin's trembling eyes, and added, "This is for the little boy who never stopped believing, even when life tried to quiet him." Then he hit the golden buzzer. Instantly, golden confetti burst from the ceiling. The stage turned into a storm of light. Arvin dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. He cried, freely, fully, finally. The judges rushed toward him. Even Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. In that moment, Arvin wasn't the Filipino Elvis. He wasn't the warehouse worker. He wasn't the boy who lost too much too soon. He was the man his mother knew he would become, the man who turned pain into music. By the time the confetti settled, the entire arena was chanting his name. And Arvin, still shaking, whispered into the microphone, "Mom, this is for you." What happened after that night changed everything. Arvin's performance went viral within hours. His story spread across continents. People shared it not because he sounded like Elvis, but because he reminded them of something real, hope. And hope, once seen, is impossible to forget. As you finish this story, let it remind you of something important. No matter how long the silence lasts, no matter how heavy the years feel, there is always a moment waiting for you, your moment, where the world finally stops, listens, and understands who you are. And if this story touched even one corner of your heart, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help us bring more stories that remind us how powerful a single dream can be. Because somewhere out there, another Arvin is waiting for his turn to step into the light.